All right, welcome back to More People, More Problems. Got a great episode in store for everyone today. We've got our first
Woo, woo,
guest.
woo.
Very exciting, and also just like a great topic that we want to dig into. We kind of started out on this culture journey as one of our first episodes way back in the day. At least 8 or 9 months ago, Britt. And
Yep.
now we're going to actually leverage our guest here to talk about how we utilize culture through inflection points within the company. So, for those who are not sure, like inflection points, like major moments in time, life moments, big events. And I bet you our guest is going to have a lot of great examples to share with us, and we're going to pick her brain throughout the next couple of minutes. So, Britt, why don't I pass it over to you to introduce?
It's my pleasure. So today we have Shannon O'Brien, who is not only a colleague of mine for 6 years, but also a dear friend. I highly, highly respect her. Find her so skilled, so amazing. Also, one hell of a good time. You get her out after the day's done, and we've had some laughs. But more importantly, just really wickedly smart, and probably a partner in crime in a lot of the culture moments at Shopify. Right now, I believe your title is Director of Internal Communications. So I'll let you dig into that in a sec. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to like pitch out. But I think really, I mean, it's just a pleasure. Thank you for coming and being our first guest. And I think it's going to be a really fun segment where we can just kind of, jazz out on all of the fun culture things. So to start, Shannon, welcome. Thanks for
Thank
joining.
thank you. I'm so
And
happy to be here.
Oh, so fun. And I mean, where do you want to start? I mean, you have such an interesting background. It makes me go back to the first time we met. So, obviously, through the interview, but then on your first day, I remember walking because it was Remembrance Day. So, we walked down because the office was downtown. We walked over, slightly awkward because, first day of work is kind of like a first date or like courting someone, and you're like trying to get to know them. You're chatting small chat. But I remember we just got into this really deep conversation. I think it was about writing. Makes sense now, but it was about something of that nature. And I remember coming back and being like, "Oh, I'm going to learn a lot from her." And so, internal communications. What does that mean? How does it relate to culture? I'll let you kick off.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've had a number of roles in comms and I think culture over my 20 some odd years in communications. And I say think culture because until I got to Shopify, I had never worked in a group that specifically had culture under the umbrella. Um, we had never said the words out loud in other organizations that I'd worked for. Um, And so I want to back it up a little bit with a quick story about how you and I actually met. I
Uh
had
oh.
come in I think it's such a good story. I had come in from another company. That company was very much a traditional corporate company and very much work from office with your desktop computer. We never worked remotely. And then one day we had a fire. And the office was on fire and I ended up getting kind of thrown into it to lead the internal comms for this. And this was one of my first internal comms challenges that I had really had to deal with on my own as a communicator. And the only reason that I had to deal with it on my own was because nobody else brought their laptop home over the Christmas holidays. And I was the one that kind of got tasked with it. And so this fire ended up kicking us all out of the office for, I think, 14 or 16 months. And during that time, we actually rebuilt our culture. And so instead of just rebuilding this very traditional, we could have been back in the building in like 6 weeks, maybe 3 months max. And instead, what we did was we decided that we were going to create a hybrid work environment. We were going to put Wi-Fi all through the building, just things that had never existed before. And we really wanted to create like cool sitting spaces, etc. Fast forward a couple months into that working from home experience, and I started to think, I wonder how other companies are doing this. And so through a friend of a friend, I ended up going to meet you, Britt, at Shopify's office. You guys had just had the slide installed. It was a big day in early Shopify. This was pre-IPO. And I remember chatting with you and I told you all about the fire. And then we talked about culture and how do you keep people engaged in, just general, how do you keep people engaged? How do you keep a culture thriving? And then I went off on mat leave. I came back and I had this old email from you in my inbox, and it said, whatever happened after the fire. And you guys had just went public now, and I was like, well, I'll come and tell you about the fire and everything that happened after that, but I want to see your new office. So I went to Shopify and I told you the story about the fire and how everything had landed and what kind of culture that we had rebuilt after that. And you're like, that's such a good story. Come back and tell it to my coworker. And that was Convol, our head of culture at the time. And so I came back, I told the story again. And then she told me to come back and tell the story to Steph. And it was at that point that I was like, am I in an interview? And that's whenever everything just kind of went really strange. And I was like, I wasn't looking for a job, Britt. But by then,
We roped you in.
talking to all of you, I was like, I need to be part of this. It was so awesome. Sorry, that was
Do
a
you
long
know that
rambling
you
story.
inspired, like, I don't know if you know this, but after we had that coffee date and you told me about the fire and how you guys decided to prolong and build new habits, and really in my head, what I heard was become anti-fragile. Like, if you're going to take the moment, break even more so that if it ever happens, you're stronger and you can withstand it. And
Totally.
so I think it was about 6 months after, we purposely just randomly closed the office before we moved into the new one for 2 months so that people would have to learn what it was like just to work from wherever. And we just wanted to create a chaos spot. And it was all inspired by your story. I remember I was walking with Toby and I was like, do you want to hear about a cool story about this company and what they did? And it just was like inspiration. And yeah, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Long ago. But yeah, it is about anti-fragility and really, and also about long-term thinking, right? We started to think about what type of people do we want to recruit here? And we probably don't want the same type of people. What's the workplace of the future going to look like?
So you did all of this, and then you jumped over to Shopify. They got you.
I did. Yes, they did. They got me. I'm still there. I just had my 8-year shop anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it's interesting even you say that because when you came over, I mean, you were joining the culture team, and clearly it was very, very evident from that first meeting to meeting Convo to meeting Daniel to probably meeting whoever else you did throughout that you were an amazing storyteller and you could articulate the experience, the moments so that someone could really understand it, feel like they were a part of it and learn from it. And I remember thinking, okay, so we need more storytellers at Shopify. But even me or Convol or you, like we didn't realize the power of that and how that goes with culture.
Yeah.
And so internal communication, so many organizations, they hire it, but they hire that role to be reactive to, oh, we know we have to communicate to hundreds or thousands of employees. So what's the best way to do it? And I think at Shopify, it was built in a really unique way. So can you tell us more about how you think it's different or how it really
Yeah.
became a part of the culture?
Yeah, I think it's true. Many companies just hire either reactive or they consider the role more of like parties and posters and clean out the fridge because your Tupperware is going to go in the garbage on Fridays.
Passive
Um,
aggressive notes everywhere.
right, the passive aggressive notes. And I remember being in school for public relations and like that internal comms must have been at the very bottom of my list of interest areas because it seemed so shallow and flighty and I wanted nothing to do with it. And I have to say at Shopify, it couldn't be further from the truth. I see the role of internal comms at this company as being so close to the decision making, at the table, part of the decision, part of the build teams now. And it's phenomenal. Like it is such an opportunity that I think communications people everywhere would be jealous of, frankly. I sound like a recruiting ad, but like honest to God, it's just amazing to be part of the build.
So
What?
I think
Oh, go ahead.
those are, sorry, Brett, I was just going to say it just pings off for me. So you're mentioning the decision table. So how do you go from the decision table to that cultural change then? Like, can you explain that a bit?
Oh man, that's a big one to
It's a big
unpack.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. So like from the decision table, which takes a lot of time and trust building, by the way, to get to the table. So like that's
And
a
even
whole other
maybe Shannon,
topic.
pause and actually rewind a little bit because I think Chelsea's question is great, but I feel like there's a preliminary, which is why does it matter? Like, in its form, why does it even matter that you're sitting at the table, that you're a part of the decision? And then I think your question is spot on, which is how do you take it from like a leader-led decision to actually evolving a culture? But it's like, why does it even matter? Like, in your opinion, we've talked about what culture we believe it is. Like, what is culture when you look at it?
Like, culture is one of those things, you know this. It's hard to put your finger on. And so communications, or the communications function, becomes the articulation and the breathing life into the culture to make it something more tangible. It's the words, it's the follow through, it's the timing, it's the bringing people along on the journey so that they can participate in the culture. The culture itself, like, I used to define it as probably very functional to the way that we had the culture team set up, which was like the events that we do and the visuals that we display and uh, the rhythm and the cadence of getting together and having our weekly town halls and things like that, in addition to the written communications. But there's this crazy thread that kind of winds through all of those things. It's the stuff that we don't do. It's the stuff that we actively turn away from, and it's the behaviors that we reward and actually say, like, yeah, more of this. This is an example of what good looks like, and like less of that. We don't want that. So I think culture is all of those things, right?
Yeah. I think that's why it's so hard to name because I think it truly is like that sum of behaviors and beliefs. But what you touched on is it's the ones that you don't do as well. And actually makes me realize, like in working with you on so many things, I always kind of knew what I felt, but I couldn't articulate it. And you would come in, and your superpower was to pull out the articulation, to then challenge because you have a great brain on you to say, well, actually, that's contradicting this. And I actually think this is what it should be. And we were great thought partners. And then I felt like you just took it, taught, like put a bow around it and was like, okay, now here. So I think to Chelsea's question, it's like you're invited to the table because I think a lot of leaders know they have to make a decision, but can't articulate it, can't actually think out loud what it is. And so your skill set of pulling that out and simplifying it, which is so hard to do, and then taking that and making it into a story that people can attach, that people can like, it's like a picture putting on your wall. You can look at it, you can remember it, you can go back to it. I think that's your superpower.
Yeah, the storytelling piece is really important, and it's something, like, not to make this all about me, but it's something I've been like, it's probably the best
It
thing
is all
that, like,
about
this
you.
it is all about me. So it probably is my superpower. It's been like something that I've been um it's come
You've been
up
working
throughout
on
my life. And it's in my family as well, right? So it's like this natural thing. I actually just found this, like, grade 10 career aptitude test result, and it's got my business results are really, really low, but my communications results were like 98%. Like, I was destined to be a communicator from the time I was 16 years old. Like, I'd had no other choice according to this aptitude test.
And I was like
Um,
the complete opposite. It's like, I love how we're like Britneyisms. I was like, that's just a nice way of saying you don't know how to communicate. Like,
Communication averse, like,
yeah,
geez.
exactly. Exactly.
but I bet your
Uh,
self awareness was really high.
yeah, probably.
Maybe just nowadays. After she's been
Chelsea's
told
been
enough
through the
times.
years.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion the other day. I was like, well, this time, like,
Yeah.
just a little.
But like the storytelling piece is, we're humans, and that's what connects us, and that's how we learn. Because like humans only want to hear about other humans. This is why we lean in. This is why we watch movies. This is why we read books, whether it's fiction, or this is why I read, Elizabeth Taylor's autobiography. I couldn't care about her. It's not like I have a particular interest in her, but it's like, I'm interested in her life. Tell me more. And we want to hear and see these examples about other humans. It's what connects us. And that's what humans do, is they want to connect dots. And so whether that's connecting dots to other humans or to other things that they already know, if I can understand that this connects to that, then I it's almost like you learn it in your heart instead of just academically in your brain.
You just gave me like a light bulb moment of the simplicity of humans. How do you even say humans want to learn from other humans? Like it's so fucking accurate. And I don't think I've ever heard you say that or thought about it in that simplicity, but we've talked around that and spiraled around it to be like, "Oh, why is this? It's so beautiful. We know humans like other people, but like what is?" And I think you're spot on. Like everything I listen to, podcasts, every book I read, it's storytelling, and I learn from it around self-awareness, growth, business strategies, like, but it's from other humans, and there's a relating factor and a feeling seen aspect that you only get when it's from another human.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
And then you layer in trust and you're really going to learn because it's
Yeah,
like,
tell
that's
me
it.
more.
Well, if you think about it, so if I wanted to make, I don't know, recently, like we're renewing our mortgage or whatever, so you can read all you want about what rates and should you lock in, should you not lock in. But the conversations that are most interesting and the conversations that probably sway you the most are the ones when you sit down with your friend, you're like, what are you doing? Like, this person is not an expert in mortgage rates, but you want to know what other people that you look up to, that you trust, that you think are smart, what are they doing? Because that's probably the thing that influences you the most. And I'm no like psychologist here, but I'm sure that you could find a relationship here to the way teen friendships work. Academically, they know what the right things to do are, and they're so swayed by their friends and their peer group and the people that they trust the most, which is not going to be their parents or a teacher or a book.
Yeah, which is a whole other lesson on behavioral economics and how
Exactly.
humans come together and what you can actually create in an environment to sway hundreds or thousands of people in different directions when you have things like trust or, like respect, which I think goes to trust. But anywho, yeah, it gets really, really interesting. And all these things go directly into culture. And so, do you think that storytelling is the biggest lever to evolving a culture?
Yeah, I do actually. I think it's the one thing where you can really show and not tell, where you can show here's how that worked before. Here's an example of what this looks like. Here's an example of what good looks like. Here's an example of where we fucked up and what we learned. Here's an example, like those past, again, they're relatable. It's got truth to it. And if you can tell that story in a really compelling way, people will also remember it. People don't remember facts and data and charts in the moment. They might say, ah, yeah, very good, makes sense. And then they will forget it instantly.
That's so
Whereas you
true.
don't forget the feeling.
You don't forget the feeling. So, like, obviously, you're an amazing storyteller, and you use these abilities to well, unbeknownst to you, you got yourself another job at Shopify, obviously. um, so, this story that you told about this fire and the way you managed this fire, how did that prepare you for another major inflection point that we experienced over the last couple of years? The old pandemic,
Yeah,
right?
from
How did
fires to
that set you up?
plagues. It was so similar actually especially in the first couple of days, because with the fire, the difference was with the pandemic, we were all equally going through it as a society, so that had a totally different thing. With the fire though, I remember my first say 3 days, I was sitting in my pajamas at my desk and I didn't move. I was at my desk in those same pajamas 3 days later, because I had just been like triaging and like fielding requests and answering people and providing hourly updates. The pandemic, it wasn't just me, there was a whole team of people. Obviously, Britt, you remember how many people were invested in making this right, but it was the same thing in those early days of just intensity and rapidly changing information. So similar preparedness in, there's a crisis, but we know we can come through it. I've seen it happen before. And that, I don't know, I think there's an optimism, and that there's this coming togetherness that crisis
Great.
situations bring, that is so incredible. And the people on the team, the people that are working through it, really, like, there's a banding together that is unreal.
I mean, there's a lot of psychology on that, on people that go to war together or experience like severe trauma together, that it's extremely bonding because once again, like humans want to feel with other humans. And when you do, you build so many different, very core elements to a relationship. But I digress. One thing you just made me think of though is it sounds like with your last company, when the fire happened, you had a pause and said, we're going to rebuild a culture. Whereas at Shopify, when the pandemic happened, we actually paused and said, we're going to use certain elements of our culture to bring us through this, and we're going to evolve other ones. And so, do you want to maybe talk about that? And I can add a little flavor here and there, but I think that, you're going to bring a really interesting view of how did that differ?
Yeah, I think so. You're right. We had a lot of elements that probably prepared us much better than many other companies, in that our culture was and is one that embraces innovation, embraces chaos. We intentionally infuse chaos bots, chaos monkeys into our organization all the time, specifically to train people how to deal with chaos. Um, and we've got a culture of really nerdy people that are super interested in doing things better and in learning and admitting failing. And we've got a culture where people are okay with just pivoting quickly and, okay, this isn't working, let's try this. And then, of course, as a tech company, we're tech savvy. So, switching everything, we were already cloud based. So it's not like we had to deal with, uh, VPN or any other clunky technologies. Like, that was fairly seamless. So we had a lot working in our favor. What
Yeah,
was working against us, if I can go there,
100%.
was the fact that a lot of people at Shopify, anyone that worked in an office, which at the time was the majority of Shopify folk, they felt so culturally attached to our office spaces. Like, we almost did ourselves a disservice by having these incredibly beautiful spaces with
Shannon, I was
gourmet
attached to your
lunches.
office spaces. I used to go there once a week for lunch, and the amount of times I wanted to go down the slide, like,
Yeah.
it was amazing. I don't see why anyone wouldn't want to be there.
Oh, totally. I brought my kids there. They loved the slide and the lunch, and there was so much attachment to that office, and so that was the one thing that really did work against us, because there was a great sense of loss
Yep.
for the space and the collectiveness of everyone just gathering in that space.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was just as much not seeing everyone. Like, we had such deep relationships across the board that it was very sad, and that was almost like less intense because it was like, well, this isn't us, this is the pandemic. So like, it's not us making the decision, but the office was a big bold one that we made early on that people were like, why are we deciding this? But I think you're right. It makes me realize how much, those foundational elements of our culture, which was bravery. Like, we really recognized when someone was going to make a big, bold decision and do it ahead of everyone else, how special that was and how it didn't need to be perfect. It needed to be, test driven development. We're an engineering company, we're a product company. You're going to do something at the level of information you have, and you'll iterate and you'll iterate. And so there was no shame if we got things wrong, as long as we continued to tell the story, as long as we continued to explain the why and how it was going to go. But I remember a huge piece of this was really painting that new picture of the future and how we could bring some of this along, but also how we had to let some of this go, like the office space, like that loss we had to acknowledge and then say, but here's how it's going to look in the future. Here's how our relationships are going to build. Here's how we're going to learn from each other when we're doing it digitally. And so it
Yeah.
was a very, very mixed bag.
Yeah, it's like, before you can really, I don't know, I think you do have to paint that picture and give the narrative appetizer before people can start to get there, if it's really far away. And this is part of the problem with being in internal comms sometimes, or being at the leadership table, is that we're privy to information a lot sooner than the average employee. And so sometimes it can be very easy to forget that, like, we're here and the other people are way over here, and we have to close that gap really quickly, so that we can't just jump in with this is going to be great. because of this. It's like we have to actually back up to where the people are and what their understanding is today, because they don't have all those pieces and all that time that we had to process.
And, like, sit in the messy middle of it. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be uncomfortable. And I remember I say this like, "Oh, yeah, I was perfect at it." This was actually something I was terrible at because I love good times. I love the story of what could be. So if I got on board with something, I'd be like, "No, but we need to go here." And people would complain. I'd be like, "No, no, but, like, let me tell you a bigger, better story." And I think you're spot on. It's very uncomfortable to be like, "No, the gap is this big. We gotta give them just as much, if not more time because they don't have all the information and sometimes they're not privy to the information because they can't be." And so, actually, great question. How do you decide what to give and what to hold back?
Yeah, that's always the case, right? So typically, like my preference is to start with how much can we share, or like defaulting to let's share everything, and then what do we have to take out because public company, because of different reasons that we might need to hold something back. But the more that we can share, the better.
Why
And
is that?
I think again, it comes down to that, like connecting all the dots, and like none of us are here because they want to be communicated at. Like we don't want to be communicated at by our company. A company is a collective of people, and we just want to be here and do a job and like feel part of this company and feel part of the group. And so to have this artificial dissemination of information just be for no reason other than you don't deserve that information doesn't make sense, right? So the more that you can share, I think the better, to bring people along the journey, to make them understand, help them understand.
And that's for that trust factor as well, then, right?
It's the trust factor. It's also about being really thoughtful about how and when to dole out the information. Are they ready to receive it? There's a readiness factor there as well.
It might be a more staged approach or, phased approach in terms of sharing pieces. Might be sharing the bulk of it, but you can't just toss it all out there in one go. So probably.
That's
Can
right.
you give an example of where you'd hold something back because, like, it would be too noisy instead of signal? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm trying to think of one because I know what you're saying is true, but I feel like for our listeners, I almost want to give something so that they can have a mental model of like, here's when you would want to give it out, and here's when you would want to hold it back because they can't even listen. They can't hear you at this point.
So I'm thinking way back in my career, and we had to communicate. There were some changes to our pension plan that were coming, and the changes were pretty, depending on where you were in your career, uh, they were more or less impactful to you. So if you were actually fairly close to retiring, it could either mean you're fine because you're in this group of people that we're just going to let you grandfather through, or if you're kind of close, like you've got your eye on your dream like retirement cottage or something, but you haven't actually pulled the trigger yet because maybe you're 5 years out. Um, the way the pension plan worked was we had to add a few more years on to fund the pension. And so we had to tell a group of people that you're not going to be able to retire with your full pension as early as you thought. And for others who were younger, myself included, we had to increase our payments into the pension plan to fund it. That's really fucking hard news to tell people.
I was gonna say you would only like it if you're already out. Otherwise, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because yes,
More
exactly.
money, more time. Like it
And
doesn't matter
and
how
the,
you
the
slice it.
truth of the matter is like it's very factual. This has to happen or there won't be enough money. We could go into all the why and why it happened and why it wasn't, maybe like I don't even remember the details now. But I received that information, and we probably could have just like said, you know what, we're ripping the band-aid off and here's what's going to happen. But you can imagine what that would look like. It would be more than noise. It would just be, table flip moment for the organization. It would take so much and it'd be so distracting to work getting done that we had to take a really phased approach. And maybe we don't need to tell everybody what's happening. We just need to tell certain cohorts because maybe you don't need to hear what the full story is. It's like, okay, for you, you're at this point in your career. Here's how this impacts you. But we had to give time for people to process what I call the me factor, including
Yeah.
myself as comms person. It's like, oh, wait, how does this impact me? Because I can't begin to do my work that I need to do until I understand how this impacts me. And I have to sit with it. And then I have to get on board.
It's
And then the
Maslow's
next
hierarchy,
layer.
right? Like it's
Yeah.
psychological safety. And if you affect that in someone, they can't think about all the other aspects of growth because they're too worried about their living, their house, their how they're going to get food, even though that's not always logical. You go there and so it completely disrupts it. So I like the slogan of like it's the me moment.
Yeah.
And you really got to give that a piece.
Yeah, I like to think of it as like me, we, and they. So like I have to get over my issues to me, and then I can start to think about we as a team or as a company of what we need to do. And then I can start to think about, okay, now how does this impact they being like our clients or our merchants or our customers? And so in order to get to the most important thing, which is your mission of your customers or your clients, you have to go through those other phases first, and you can get there quickly. And that's where, the cultural training of being people that are quick to pivot, that understand chaos, that know what they need to do. You can get there pretty fast, but
Can,
you do have to go through the phases.
can you ever do it backwards? Like, could you believe that you can start with the they and then the we and then the me?
Sorry, I'm a hot
Excuse
mess over
Chelsea's
here.
noisiness in the
I'm
background.
just being
But you know
super
what I
noisy.
mean?
I was
Like,
writing a
like,
note because it was
oh,
so it was so great what she said. I wanted to write it down.
oh,
That's
there
all.
we go. Taking notes right in it. But you know
Sorry
what I
about
mean?
that.
Like, I just think it's weird because it kind of goes both ways. Like, and maybe the communication is the addressing of the me, the we, then the they, but then you have to like go backwards. Like, is it a scale that you go up and down?
Yeah, I guess so. For sure, because especially in a crisis situation, right, where there's something that has happened and there's an actual catalyst for a thing, and like a comms has to happen.
Well, we look at Shopify, the pandemic. I remember
Yeah.
comms, 90% of it was our merchants need us the most right now. People in brick and mortars, people that had a job that no longer do, that want to sell online, like there was a call to arms for us. And so we started with the they, and then we worked our way back, knowing that the me was so important. And we spent a lot of time on that as well. But we definitely started with the they as like a rally call. And so
Mm.
it probably depends on
Although
the type of info.
at the same time, we were taking care of back to the hierarchy of needs. We were taking care of the, if you are sick, here is
Yeah, you're
the
right. Yeah.
public health number, or like the very basic, like if you're actually unable to work, or you are scared, or you need, some mental health supports and resources. We didn't ignore that, right? So but we didn't start there. I think those happened in tandem.
It makes me well, I can't even remember where we started because I think what we ended up doing was addressing each bucket and actually going hard, and you weaved the story all together along with many leaders, myself included, but like really your skills were vastly needed and utilized during that. But I think we did address all three, and maybe that is it too. Like there probably is a segment that you go through each one, but there's also, depending on the moment, it's the and. It's never an
Yeah.
or. You can't just do one and expect people to jump on board and be like, "Yay, change, that's going to really suck." It's like, "No, you got to address the me, the we, and the they."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Like even more recently, on a much smaller scale, nothing compared to the pandemic. I don't think. I pray. I hope nothing is ever as big as the pandemic in
Yeah.
our lifetimes again. Um, but at Shopify earlier this year, we put in a new platform, a new communications platform, and we put in Workplace by Meta, which has cultural implications, right? Tooling is extremely important to any organization, and I would say Shopify is very, very passionate about the tools that we use, because we create software too, and so we've got strong opinions and really smart people that uh, could probably build better software if that's what they were working on. And so we approach these things so carefully with a cultural lens at the same time. So the when we launched Workplace, someone in our quite high up in our IT department and me, we paired and we co-led the project to make sure that culture and communications was equally represented and that we were talking through the right things. And so going back to the I, we, they, we had to equally put emphasis on making sure, first of all, people could actually use the thing on the first day. But the whole point of this was to get us better at communicating so that we can build better product for our merchants, right? And so it's like, let's get through this really fast. So it feels uncomfortable to use this new software, and you might not like it. Not everybody likes software that is new. And, there's different people that have different views. And we have to get everybody through that so that we can just start using this platform to communicate really well so that we can continue to build really good software for our merchants.
Yeah.
So, question for you then on that, Shannon. What are the main differences then between communications and culture?
Back to the question, that's such a hard one to answer. I think, like, I don't know. I find it really hard to, it's like a twisted braid in my head of these things and how you could remove it. I guess if it was just communication, it would be very factual, but that's not the way we practice communications at our company anyway, because our company, with any major change at Shopify, we start with a narrative. And that's the first thing that our leadership team asks for is, what's the narrative? And I imagine that that's fairly unique.
I think the narrative said in another way is like, what are we highly aligned on? What matters to us? Why? And what does this look like? And one of the differentiating factors of Shopify compared to other companies I've advised, I've worked with is there is such high alignment. You can disagree, but you have to commit at a certain point. And that narrative is that thread that goes through. And the narrative, the communication becomes the biggest tool to get your culture going in a new direction. So I think culture, in my opinion, it is that sum of behavior and beliefs, and it's a integrated, braid or whatever, because it has so much more. It's events, it's symbols, but language is probably the most critical. And that ability to use language to bring people along is just, I think, the secret sauce. It's articulating what matters most. What do you want to see? Is it, resourcefulness? Is it corporate speak? Like, is it,
Yeah.
like I want to follow hierarchy and that's really important to organization? You get to decide. But once you have that, how do you actually evoke change in behaviors? So maybe what it is, it's culture at scale is done through communication. It's done through storytelling. It's done through alignment.
Yeah, it comes down to the very words that you use, right? So sometimes you can't say the thing for whatever reason, but you can signal a thing.
Yeah.
So you can, the specific word that you choose to use is it's almost like, okay, read between the lines. Sometimes that's important. Um, it evokes the energy, and like you can almost hear sometimes the tone at which something is being, like, even if you're reading a written communication, you can almost feel the tone behind it, or like how somebody might say it. Is this something that should excite me? Or is this something less interesting? Or is this something I should actually, it's just a process change and I should spend almost no time on this because it's just some, policy,
It's a need to
boring
know,
thing,
but not
legal
actually
thing
have a
that you have
feeling
to
about.
share with your employees about their employment contract or something. But it's like, we don't want people spending too much time worrying about this thing. So you can downplay some of that stuff with language choices. It's almost, I don't know, maybe
This
it's a
is
bit
what
of
you're
a,
talking about. It's like a mastery of craft, though, because we've had
yeah.
people, and I'm sure you still do within Shopify, but everywhere around communications, that someone comes in and they can write the thing, but there's no feeling, there's no tone, there's no vibe. And that's the cultural element on top of, okay, this, they fully get the environment, they get those beliefs, behaviors underneath, and they can build that into it. And I think you've nailed that very early on. You were able to absorb and then push back out. And that's really hard to do. But yeah, you're great at that. And I think really great storytellers, communicators are able to do that.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of really, really great writers, and not always in the comms team, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
they exist everywhere. It's not even great writers, just people that really understand the there's a nuance, and it's really, really hard to articulate. And I get asked this all the time on my team or at the company, like, teach me how to do it. And it's like there's books and books and books out there on how to be a great writer, how to tell a great story. There's master classes, there's all kinds of things, and it's a craft, to your point, Britt, where you have to really invest in it.
You have to be vulnerable. You have to be brave, because I think of what I've learned a lot from you and from other amazing communicators that have been on the team is that you got to say the thing. I remember actually my one tidbit I'll add is when you're thinking about how to communicate a story or something to the company, if you want everyone to be okay with it, you've already lost the battle, because no one's going to actually care or react to it. And so when you have people reacting, it's a really good signal that you actually said the thing, that you're moving in the right direction. You really don't want a peanut butter approach at all. And when you're the one who's up in front of the stage or sending the email to thousands of people, and you get hundreds of people that don't like it and reply, it can be really, really hard. But that's that piece of be vulnerable, be brave, say the thing. It's flipping hard. And actually, on that note, because I know we're going to go to wine time soon, but what is your last question? Maybe what is your thoughts specifically when you go to push out a change, you use communication culture to evolve through an inflection point, and people just blow the fuck up. They don't like it. How do you deal with that? How much space do you give for it? What are the
Uh,
tactics?
yeah, hopefully it's not a surprise, right? So I hopefully by the time the comms, whatever it is, email, post, Slack ping, whatever, video, hopefully by the time the button is pushed, we're expecting a certain response. Because I think otherwise you haven't planned very well and you haven't thought it through in the shoes of the audience. And I think that's something that, you can't underestimate that practice and that exercise of going through how might this land. Um, and so hopefully it's not a surprise. And so you've got your reactive comms plan in place and how you're going to respond. Otherwise, there's a whole lot of being, to your point, being brave and saying the thing and then standing behind your decision. You've made your decision and it's time to be brave. And I hope I don't sound callous, because I know, finding jobs is hard and it's not always easy, but I've left companies too whenever they don't serve me anymore. And they might have served a purpose in my life for a while. It gave me a paycheck or it gave me the experience that I was looking for in a certain area. But when a company doesn't serve me anymore, I'm ready to go. I spend half my life in this fucking chair. To be sitting here in this chair, not liking something enough that I feel so emotionally, wrought by it, that I just feel like people have free agency. I guess
Yeah.
maybe I can understand and I have empathy, and I think it's a job and you should really feel good about it. And so whenever there's these moments, and there are moments, and we should all want to make our companies better and we should all be ready to express our opinion. But when it gets to the point where you can't disagree and commit, those are the reactions that I look for, that I'm like, why are you
Yeah. Yeah. Life
here? You just
lessons, folks, with
Yeah,
Shannon
really
O'Brien.
good advice. Shannon O'Brien. You should have her own podcast, I'm
I
thinking.
know.
Listen
Hey,
to her
who
all
knows?
night.
I keep telling her, write a book. And then she tells me, write a book. And I'm like, well, yours is going to be better. So you go first.
It's funny. I think I'm really good at telling a verbal story, but it's because I have an expressive face and I like to get really, and my stories get bigger and more wild
Mhm.
the more I retell them, to the point that they're half made up. But it's that, I think that's when I try to write it down, I feel like I lose. It goes from being a 3D image to a 2D image. And I just feel like I lose so much when it's about me and my personal life. So
Yeah.
there's probably a coach that could talk me through that. And it's
I
probably
feel
all
like
kinds of,
yes. And
You'll
also
be
I
fine.
think that's just a you thing. I think everyone would be seeing it in multi levels and multicolor. It's probably, just a scary thing. But let's get some wine and talk more about that or whatever we choose. So we'll be right back with our wine time, and hold tight. And cheers. We are back. Everyone's got a little
Cheers.
wine. Taste
Cheers.
it up. Mine's
We
okay.
got two whites and
Um,
a red here.
I know. You know why though? I just went for the bottle that's open because I'm out all weekend and I didn't want to open, have one glass and then
Mm,
waste it. I hate that. So I was like, I'm going to do the open bottle, but it's one we've already had. So I'm not going to brag about it.
Why
Okay.
not?
So, little known fact, we got a proper sommelier. Okay. First off, is that how you say it?
sommelier.
How to say it one more time?
Sommelier.
Sommelier.
It's a French word, right? So sommelier.
I think you're
You want to
getting it
hear?
pretty right.
Yeah,
Right?
you're good.
So
Sommelier.
when I first learned about it, I was like out and I thought I was being so like, knowledgeable. And I was like, oh yeah, are you a sniffier? I thought that's what it was called. And the person looked at me like I was such a tool. And I was like, I got it wrong. Like, in your head where you're like, fuck, fuck, fuck. I was like, I got it wrong. I got it wrong. But I
You're
didn't
just
know what it
making
was.
fun of them because they sniff the wine and they make a
Well,
big
and
deal about it.
I think that's what happened. I just like
Your
got too
inside voice
imaginative.
came out.
A sniffier. I don't even know
I
how
know.
you could say that.
Well,
I like
it
it.
makes sense if you think about it. But anywho,
Well,
back.
we've got our own in-house sniffier here.
Sniffier.
Maybe she wants to
Yes.
give us a little.
Yeah, I started learning about wine after I had my second child when I realized that I needed my own life. So this was my mat leave project.
I was gonna
Was
say, did they go? Was that like a causality? Like, did the second child induce wine drinking, or was
No,
it more so?
I had actually signed up before, and then I realized I was pregnant, and they were like, "You could still do it," and I'm like, "Because you could spit out the wine." And I'm like, "No,
That's no fun.
I don't want
That's
to be
no
sitting there
fun.
9 months pregnant, sipping all kinds of wine."
I feel like it would
Um,
just be such a waste. I would not want to waste it.
I know. It took it would have taken all the fun away for me,
Yeah,
and also just I don't know. I wasn't really craving a shit ton of wine when I was early pregnant anyway.
I was gonna
So
say good news.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I can tell you what I'm drinking here. So I just ordered. I found this wine. It's called O.P.P. It's a Pinot Noir from Oregon.
Oh, I would like that. Is it good?
It is good, and in
Am I
fact,
gonna get
so
it?
good that I ordered 6 more bottles.
Oh,
Um, and then I was on his website earlier. It's a company or a winery called Maison Noir. And the winemaker is this guy, Andre Mack. And he went from like having no money making wine in his garage to like a multi-million-dollar winery in 5 years. And now he talks about being an entrepreneur and how to be an entrepreneur with almost no startup money.
wow.
Super inspiring guy. And he is, I don't know, he won some award in Texas for being the best young sommelier in America.
But like,
And
who's buying his wine when he's making it in the garage? Like who's the one that's like,
Nobody's
what do
oh,
you
over
really
sticking
here?
it
know
in
though
a
when you go to the
bottle.
wine store?
I guess not.
Yeah, man,
Yeah,
you'd
true.
be getting it for like $10 or something, and if it's good, yeah, I'd be going back.
Yeah.
I guess so. Good on him. I love the story. See, this is
Yeah.
what we're talking about. You connected me to a person, and now I want to buy the wine even more.
Oh, he just sounds so cool. In fact, I'm nerd alert. I sent him an email or I sent the
No,
winery an email. I'm like, I just want to tell you, I liked your wine so much. I bought a case. Like, I just really like it. It's super approachable. Um,
she's already
something that
using like terms that I'm like, have we ever
It's a
used
good
that,
time.
Chels? Super
No, we
approachable.
have
I'm going to take that. Okay, go on.
we haven't. We're going to use that. Stolen.
um, one of the things that was really important to me. So I've done a bunch of wine tastings with groups of people, friends. During the pandemic, I actually created these wine tasting kits and was delivering them to people's homes, and then we were doing wine tastings virtually, and with 6 different samples and whatnot. It was super fun. Nice
Wish
little
I knew about that.
pandemic project. Uh, well, I couldn't ship it outside of Ontario though, because apparently it was illegal.
Yeah, whatever.
Lessons learned. But yeah, so one thing that was really, really important to me was not to like so many people. It's unbelievable. After I tell them that I know a little bit about wine, they would get really nervous about ordering a glass of wine off the menu with me around, or like they would, you choose, like they didn't want to. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like wine is just meant to be whatever you like to drink. It's okay. I just happen to know a little bit more about the wines that I happen to like to drink.
Yeah.
Like,
You know what's interesting? So for my dad's, gosh, it must have been his 50th, we did 12 bottles of wine. So each kid got 4 bottles. We wrapped them up because his birthday is December 23rd. And we said every month we're going to open a bottle and we're going to do a blind taste testing on a like Sunday family dinner.
That's so
And
fun.
we had a range of like buy a cheaper one, buy a more expensive, and then like 2 wild balls, whatever you want. And we tracked it all. Craziest thing was like, we all had diverse tastes. So like not one person's going to like the same thing. But the even more wild thing was the cheaper ones, like the mid-range, were ranked higher than the $50 bottles or 60, like the J-Lore, which is like a $20 bottle cab sauv. You got to like that style. But like my family likes a good full cab sauv. Like that one better than like Behringer, which was like $60. And it's just like, you really, yeah, you don't know. So go
Depends on your
blind.
taste.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
don't know how to describe it. Like when you like approachable, I always say like
Yeah.
bold.
Yeah. So it's funny. That was the one thing that was my biggest learning taking the wine courses was I didn't have a vocabulary for it because I had never really like with smell. I think that we have a lot of like or like the with this sense of sight we can describe things. It's bright, it's light, it's beautiful, it's like you can get really like it's sharp, it's got pointy edges, it's I don't know, it's got a rough texture to look at. There's so many sight related words in our vocabulary, but when it comes to smell, which is actually how you taste, we don't have very much. And so I started actually going to the grocery store and being that weird person. This is pre-pandemic because nobody wants to see that after the pandemic of like smelling all of the fruits and sticking my nose
Imagine you
into the
did that during the
berries.
pandemic.
Well, I kind of do that now too because you want to know if it's right. Because
I
if
know if
it's
it's
right,
got,
you can smell it. If it doesn't smell like anything, it's probably not right.
especially
Right?
melons and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get
Like
it.
I'm definitely a fruit pervert. Like my husband says that to me all the time. He's like, Can you stop touching the fruits?" And this must be from a Seinfeld episode. But I'm just like, you have to really feel it and like touch it and then sniff it, sniffy, to really get the most of what you're gonna buy to make sure it's
Exactly.
feeding
I
you.
started doing it in the shower. I would smell my shampoos and stuff, and then try and break it down. What am I actually smelling?
I was wondering where that was going for a
Vanilla.
second. When you said like, I started
Speaking
doing
of
the
fruit
shower. I was like,
perverts,
where is she going with this? Like, this could
yeah,
be
no, just smelling
interesting.
things. Yeah, and actually naming the smells and saying them out loud so that your brain can remember what it is when you're smelling. So going through your spice
Oh,
cabinet, going
mango.
through like all of the foods in your cupboard, finding each smell, smelling it, give it a name because then you can ascribe that name whenever you are
Yeah.
smelling your wine and tasting your wine to be
Sounds like
like
a lot of work.
I
She's
think it's just
honing her
an
craft.
unpracticed thing.
Yeah.
You,
We just don't talk about it.
you
We
know
say
what?
something smells bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I was gonna say, you know what we do at the house all the time because my husband loves to watch like Master Chef and like Hell's Kitchen and all that. So they blindfold the folks and then they do them the taste testing, the different ingredients. So one day we did it with the kids. We're like, oh, we'll blindfold the kids, and then we got 10 little pots of different things like raisins and different like sauces and that. They ask us to do that all the time, and they nail it every time. We're like, we're
Do you ever
really
throw a little
helping them
hot
out.
sauce in?
What's that?
You ever throw a little hot sauce
Yeah,
in
man,
just to
kids love
like
hot
screw?
sauce. Kids love a little bit of Frank's Red Hot. I got my Slap Ya Mama from New Orleans. I just brought back. The kids love it.
It's
So that's
great.
gonna be on the next taste test.
Well, Shannon, we got a new hit for you. Blindfold yourself and let your kids feed you and see what happens.
That is terrifying. My kid literally brought me a box of bees to my bed the other day. Bees,
So
like
Shannon
bumblebees.
has the best
Really? Like
stories of
alive?
her kids and what they bring into the house and do. Like, oh, it just makes you laugh. Like bees are like not even as bad as some of the other things that have come into your
A,
bedroom.
a cup of spiders. I was in the bathroom. I was on the toilet for like 1 second of peace. And Nico walks in and he hands me a cup. And I don't know for the life of me why I took the cup, but I took the cup and I look and it was a cup of spiders. And then he left. And now I'm holding a cup of fucking spiders in a very vulnerable position. It's
What
These
did
terrible.
you
kids
even
need to.
do?
There needs to be a conversation that's happening with these children. Because if anyone ever handed me some live insect or like bug or something while I was in the can, I'd be like, listen, that's enough of this.
Yeah, man, my kids are a lot.
Kids are
They're great.
funny. They get
Yeah.
away with, they're just so innocent and like cute. But I mean, the spiders would be too much for me just because I hate spiders.
Oh,
But
yeah, but I can't tell my kids I hate spiders because then
because
that's
then
like
they
the
would torment you
Achilles.
more.
More
Oh,
spiders.
yeah.
More
I have to be like,
spiders.
"Oh, cool. Those are
You know what
amazing."
I was gonna mention quickly about the whole taste testing thing? One of my like funniest memories of it cracks me up. Like, right when you're like, "Oh, let's blindfold ourselves and let the kids do it with us." We've done that once or twice, me and my
Oh,
husband, where like we take our turns. Okay, they put like a piece of chocolate in my mouth. Get this, my son then puts a toy car straight into my husband's mouth. Like, yeah, he's like, I'm like, I died. Like I literally
just
died.
tried to choke them.
Yeah, he's expecting a spoon of coconut or something, and then he just shoves a toy car. He's like 3 years old at this point, and it's like still one of the funniest pictures in my mind of I can't believe that just happened, and his reaction was just priceless.
It's
But yeah,
amazing.
so be careful what you allow your kids to do. Let's just
Yeah.
So one of the descriptors, or a really well-known descriptor for Pinot, I don't know if you know, is barnyard.
Yeah, but I hate that. I know exactly what it is, but and for, every summer going to a barnyard, it's like a little too close to home, and so I don't like that as the descriptor.
I know, because once you name it and you say it out loud, it's like that's all you can smell.
Yeah,
is it
it's
like
too
meant to be like an earthy, like a manure?
Yeah, like a
Yep,
manure. Yeah. And so, especially if you get some people will say that they like a really dirty Pinot, and it's like it's really,
just
really
sounds
going
sexual, eh? I
Yeah,
like
dirty
a really
Pinot.
dirty Pinot. Like, I
yeah.
feel like I'm gonna pull that out at the bar at some point just to get a reaction.
Well, it's
Fun
like whenever
story.
you order a martini, I'll get a dirty, extra dirty
Extra
martini,
dirty.
like very aggressive.
Fun story also about Pinots. So I don't know, the movie Sideways.
Yeah,
There was this wine movie, and in it, the main character, Billy Crystal, maybe. Anyhow, he turns like he flips out about like no more Merlot, fuck Merlot, no more Merlot. Give me a Pinot. The wine, uh, like wine marketing is super super fickle, or like the wine consumers are very fickle, and so sales of Merlot actually tanked after. And so a lot of wineries stopped making Merlot altogether, and they ripped out
just
all
because
of
that
their
movie.
vineyards, and the sale of Pinot went through the roof because of
That's
that
like the
movie.
first stage of influencers
He's an
without
It's
influencer.
knowing it.
it's insanity. Like if you look at the actual numbers, the wine industry and the marketing and the money that goes into creating labels and the look and the feel, even the bottles that they use, is it just reminds me so much of the fashion industry,
Yeah.
of how like this is fashionable, this is not, this feels uncool, this feels refined.
Oh my God, like Justin Bieber brought back flipping Crocs with like little cartoons pegs on them. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
You know
That's
what
it.
though? I know so many people that go to LCBO or wherever you buy wine and just look at the labels and will just buy it based off that
Yeah,
alone.
it's cute.
So, like, it doesn't surprise me that it's so fickle because so many people don't actually know the depth of what they should know. So then they go off of very, yeah, like the first layer.
Yeah, I look for sugar content because I don't
Me
like
too.
sweeter wines, so I go for as low sugar as I can for almost every wine. And then after that, I am the person that takes forever at the liquor store because I pull up the spec, like I go to the winery website and then I go to their spec sheet. So if you Google spec sheet for a specific wine, then you get like how it was actually made. So it's usually like a PDF or something on their website that is in addition to like their public stuff, or you can email them and ask for their spec sheet and they'll usually send it to you. And then
You
you can
should
find
create a
out.
blog of great wines, like
A
Shannon's
level of
getting in
dedication.
shambles,
We should
like
link
something
it.
like,
We'll link it
yeah.
to the podcast.
Well, she doesn't have one yet, but I'm saying she should.
I'll get on that.
I would buy all your wines. I'm
Just
just
start a
saying.
Google Doc and we'll link it.
Yeah, wine influencer.
Perfect.
It's funny
Yeah.
though, because I heard from someone, when you see on the tag, you can see like per like grams of sugar per liter. Someone told me that that's all bullshit, and it like rocked my world because I buy heavily based off drier wines. Like I can also taste it more so, but like my mom and my brother are diabetic, so we always, when we would share wine, look at the lowest sugar within it. And then someone, and I don't know why I believe this woman, I don't even know her, but she was like, "It's a lie. hate to break it to you. And it was like,
Well,
is it a
that sounds
lie?
like a lie.
So the LCBO, at least in Ontario, they test their wines, and so
Ah,
they will get. So if you've ever seen a bottle of wine that has a sticker with like, so here it says, um, 13.5% alcohol. If you see a sticker over top, it means that the LCBO is kind of sticker shaming them because they've
Okay.
tested it and it's not 13.5% alcohol.
Interesting.
It's actually 15% or 12% or whatever. And they sticker shame them.
interesting.
They're allowed a little bit of deviance because, the testing isn't perfect. But if it's there, because if it's over, I think 15% alcohol for a wine, they have to sell it as an alcohol, which has a different tax or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Also
LCBO is
potent,
pretty good
potent
about
wine.
testing that stuff. The one thing that you do have to keep in mind, though, is sugar balances out with alcohol. And so if you've got a very high alcohol wine, which like this one here is 13.5, 15% would be a very high alcohol wine. If you've got a 15% wine, it'll taste very boozy if they don't add a lot of sugar, or not add a lot of sugar, but if they don't let the sugar in the grapes like sit there and like actually get
Yeah.
nice and sweet. And so they use sweeter what like anyway, I'm not a technical person here on the wine making
You're doing
process, but
great.
like they balance each other out. And that's whenever they say it's well balanced means there's a balance between the tannins, which are the things that
Ah,
make your gums feel dry.
yeah.
The
Tingly on the
tannin
tongue.
and the tongue. And after you've got a lot of tannins, you can't really taste anything else.
Permanently or just while you're drinking at the moment?
just
Just screws with you for the rest of your life.
Just
Imagine.
trying to set it up here. Make sure I'm not fucked
Game
up.
over. I honestly think we've
game
learned just as
over.
much about wines as we have about
Yeah,
communications in this spot.
this was equally as valuable to me and to the
I know.
viewers.
It's great. Tune
Yeah.
in, folks.
Well, like I'm just so freaking glad because I got to kick the kids out, and I was like, I have a professional obligation to sit and drink wine with a couple of cool, really awesome ladies.
I do that every week, girl. Like, it's the best.
I've got work to do. I'm working late.
Right? Chelsea
Yeah.
literally does do that. Her kids will come near and she's like, Mama's working as she sips her wine. I'm like, okay.
It's easier when I go off site to do the old podcast because, like, it's just Katie and I. We both drink, she's running the podcast. We're all drinking. We're all enjoying ourselves regardless. There's no interruptions. Here I feel a bit more guilty. I'm obviously at the house, right now. No one's interrupted, though, but you never know.
No, I know. Ticking time bombs.
It is.
I know, they
Only
really
got
are.
until about 7:15 until someone breaks in.
Legit, though.
They're terrifying.
Okay, well, with that, thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate this. We appreciate it. Drink your wine, enjoy it. I'm going to be looking for those double labels on the wine bottles now. I'm going to be like, gotcha. You know what I mean?
Sticker shame.
Yeah.
There's not
You
one.
have one?
There's not one on this 30 bench. It's just a basic bitch wine. Rochelle's favorite. Shout out to Rochelle. She loves the
Niagara?
old 30 bench
Yeah.
Riesling. Yeah, no
Yeah.
sticker. Low
Very good.
alcohol
That one's
content.
a sweet
though.
one, though.
It is sweet. Bit too sweet for my liking nowadays. 10.6% could be higher.
Yeah, you don't want to
Oh,
go
I
too high
didn't
with the
ask.
white.
O.P.P. That
Yeah.
makes me think of, isn't that song O.P.P. You Know Me?
It's been
Isn't
in my
that
head
okay.
ever since I pulled out this bottle.
Yeah.
It actually stands for other people's Pinot.
Oh, cute. See, they spent good marketing dollars on that shit. What would you rank it 1 to 10?
Okay, so I like to try lots of wines, so I very infrequently buy a case, and I already said I bought another 6 bottles. I'd give this a solid 7.5 or an 8.
Oh, you're a hard ranker.
You know what? Like I said, it's an approachable wine. This is what you would call like a Tuesday night sipper. Like
Yeah.
you don't feel bad if you don't finish the rest of the bottle, but it's like it's not cheap, but it's like not crazy expensive. But yeah, I don't have that problem either. I just like to say that.
You don't feel bad, but in reality, ain't no one leaving a bottle half finished.
There's no
I'm
problem.
bad for that. That is one thing that I'm bad for because I mainly drink with people, not alone. Like it's a social or when I'm out. And so when I'm at home, it's like I'm never like sometimes I'll crack one, but then it just
Oh.
sits.
We have different
Yeah.
problems, and I tell you.
Well,
I thought I
listen.
was detoxing from New Orleans, and then the second 3 p.m. hit today. I was like, "Ooh, that glass of wine's gonna be real good."
That's the taper off, though. That's the taper
Yeah,
down.
and then it just keeps going for the rest of the week into next week.
Listen, it's
Let's give it
not
an
good.
8. We'll give it an 8.
Oh, I like the 8. It's also not good to go all or nothing, you know? So, Chelsea,
It's
you're
not healthy
tapering,
for
which
you.
is good. A healthy balance.
Yeah, it's not healthy for you to do a full detox. In reality, not good for you.
Okay, ladies, I adore you. Cheers again. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much.
you all
Cheers.
Yeah.
enjoy.
Thank you for joining, Shannon.
Thank you. That was really fun. Thanks.